The shank sliced through the air like a whisper from hell, aimed straight for Aiden's throat. He didn't scream, couldn't. With the gang of wolves circling him in the shadowed corner of the prison yard, their laughter a jagged blade twisting deeper than any knife. "Come on, princess," the leader snarled, his breath hot and foul against Aiden's ear. "Time to earn your pretty little name, female." Blood hit the concrete first, warm and sticky, but it wasn't Aiden's. Matthew barreled in like a freight train from the weight room, his massive frame slamming into the attacker with the force of a man who'd long ago learned that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. The yard erupted, fists flying, guards barking orders over the chaos, but in that frozen heartbeat, Aiden locked eyes with his savior, a stranger whose gaze burned through the fear like sunlight-piercing storm clouds. It was the first time anyone had ever fought for him, not against him, and in the brutal heart of Blackwood State Penitentiary, that single act cracked open something raw and human inside Aiden, a fragile hope he'd buried deeper than his own screams. Aiden Harper had always been too soft for the world outside these razor-wire walls, and now, at 24, Blackwood was chewing him up like yesterday's regret. Pennsylvania's endless gray skies mirrored the concrete jungle he'd called home for the past 8 months, ever since that bullshit drug charge pinned him here, courtesy of a dealer who'd rolled over faster than a snitch in a lineup. He wasn't built for this, slim as a reed, with cheekbones that caught the light like they were carved from marble and eyes green as the Irish hills his ma used to sing about before the cancer took her. Back in Philly, folks had called him pretty, a word that twisted into something ugly the moment the cell doors clanged shut. Female, they started calling him on day 3. It slithered from the bunks like smoke, coiling around his neck during chow lines and showers. First, Aiden laughed it off. Hell, he'd taken worse from high school jocks who couldn't handle a guy who preferred sketchbooks over footballs. But laughter dried up quick when the shoves turned to grabs, the whispers to propositions laced with threats. He learned to keep his head down, his sketchpad hidden under his mattress like a dirty secret, drawing faces from memory. His little sister's gap-toothed grin, the curve of a lover's jaw he'd left behind in the free world. That lover, ex-lover, really was Jake, a tattooed barista who'd promised forever until Aiden's arrest splashed their quiet life across the tabloids. "I can't do this," Jake had whispered through the phone that last visit, his voice cracking like cheap glass. "People are staring. It's too much." The line went dead, and with it, the last thread of Aiden's old self. Now, in Blackwood, forever felt like a punchline. Matthew Kane, on the other hand, was forged in Fire 32, built like a brick shithouse from years hauling crates in his family's Pittsburgh steel mill before a botched heist landed him a 15-year bid for armed robbery. He didn't talk much about the outside. Didn't need to. His rep preceded him, the quiet enforcer who'd stared down the Aryan Brotherhood without blinking, his left arm inked with a faded Celtic cross that whispered of Catholic guilt and lost brothers. Matthew had rules, ironclad ones. Keep your head down, your fists ready, and your heart locked tighter than the gates at dawn. Love, that was for suckers who'd never tasted the sting of betrayal, like the cousin who'd fingered him to the cops for a plea deal. But rules had a way of crumbling in places like this, where the air reeked of bleach and despair, and the only color came from bruises blooming like wildflowers. Matthew first spotted Aiden in the library, hunched over a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby, his fingers tracing Daisy's illusions like they held the key to escape. Something in the kid's profile, the vulnerable tilt of his head, the way his lips parted in quiet concentration, snagged in Matthew's chest, a hook he couldn't shake. He told himself it was pity. Blackwood ate pretty boys alive, and Aiden screamed fresh meat. That pity curdled into something fiercer the day he overheard the whispers in the weight yard. Females got that ass beggin' for it. One of Rico's crew, low-level dealers running product under the guards' noses, muttered, loud enough to carry. Matthew's grip tightened on the barbell, veins bulging like rivers ready to flood. He knew Rico. Slick-talking Puerto Rican with a switchblade smile and a grudge against anyone who didn't pay tribute. Aiden was weaving through the benches, tray in hand from the mess hall, oblivious until Rico's shadow fell over him. "Hey, Princessa," Rico drawled, snatching the tray and dumping its contents, mystery meat and watery peas, onto the dirt. The yard snickered, a chorus of hyenas. Aiden froze, cheeks flushing crimson, but he didn't back down. "Pick it up," he said, voice steady as a lie. Rico laughed, stepping closer, his hand shooting out to grab Aiden's collar. Matthew didn't think. He just moved. The barbell clattered to the ground as he crossed the yard in 3 strides, his fist connecting with Rico's jaw like thunder cracking open the sky. Bone crunched. Rico spun, spitting blood and a tooth. "The fuck? Kane?" he wheezed, scrambling back as his crew tensed. Guards were already yelling, batons out, but Matthew stood firm, chest heaving, eyes locked on Aiden, who stared back, wide-eyed, like Matthew was some avenging angel dropped from the clouds. "Touch him again," Matthew growled, low and lethal, "and I'll bury you deeper than your mama's rosary." The yard held its breath. Rico wiped his mouth, calculating, then slunk away with a muttered curse. The guards hauled Matthew to the hole, solitary for a week, but as they dragged him off, he caught Aiden's gaze one last time. Gratitude flickered there, mingled with something electric, unspoken. It was enough to make a man question his rules. Solitary was a black hole, 10 by 8 feet of regret and echoes. Matthew paced the concrete, replaying the punch, the kid's face. Aiden. He'd learned the name from the roster, whispered it to himself like a prayer. Why him? Matthew had seen 100 pretty faces turn to ghosts in here. He'd even turned a blind eye to a few. But Aiden's eyes, God, those eyes held stories, not just survival. They begged to be heard. Back in Gen Pop, the shift was subtle but seismic. Word spread. Kane's got a soft spot for the twink. Rico's crew kept their distance, but eyes lingered, Aiden's included. He found Matthew in the chow line the next day, sliding onto the bench across from him like it was the most natural thing. "Thanks," Aiden said, poking at his slop. "For, you know," Matthew grunted, forking into his own meal. "Don't mention it. Just eat." But Aiden didn't stop. He talked, halting at first, about Philly's street art scene, the murals he'd paint if he ever got out, the sister waiting on the outside with pigtails and dreams of college. Matthew listened, surprised at how the kid's voice wrapped around the noise like smoke signals. He shared scraps in return. The mill's roar, his Dawes whiskey breath, the heist that went south because trust was a fool's gamble. Nights blurred into weeks, their bunks aligned by some cruel joke of the system. Aiden on the top tier, Matthew below. Whispers through the bars became routine. "You ever miss the rain?" Aiden would murmur after lights out. "Feels like freedom. You know?" Matthew would rumble back about Pittsburgh's steel skies, how they'd bend you double but never break you clean. It was dangerous, this pull. Matthew felt it in the way his pulse kicked when Aiden laughed. A rare, bright sound that cut through the gloom like contraband sunlight. Aiden felt it too. In the sketches he started hiding, Matthew's profile, rough lines capturing the scar above his eye, the quiet strength in his jaw. He burned them one night, terrified of what they meant, but the images lingered, hotter than shame. The first touch came accidental, in the laundry room's steam-choked haze. Hands brushed over a folded sheet. Aiden's fingers slim and calloused from pencils, Matthew's rough as sandpaper. Time stuttered. Aiden's breath hitched. Matthew's thumb grazed his knuckle. Deliberate now, a spark jumping the gap. Neither pulled away. "You shouldn't," Matthew muttered, but his voice was gravel, not warning. "Too late," Aiden whispered, and in that humid corner, with the dryers rumbling like distant thunder, Matthew leaned in. Their lips met tentative, tasting of salt and forbidden want, a kiss that shattered rules like glass under boot heels. From there, it was stolen moments, brushes in the yard, notes slipped into library books. Aiden bloomed under it, his sketches turning vivid, lovers entwined under city lights, not prison bars. Matthew cracked open, sharing ghosts. The brother OD'd in an alley, the love he'd buried young and scared. "Thought I was done with this shit," he'd confess, hand tracing Aiden's wrist in the shadows. "Feels like starting over," but Blackwood wasn't built for starting overs. Whispers grew to rumors, and rumors to threats. Rico, nursing his grudge, watched from the corners, plotting. And deeper still, Matthew's own crew, the Iron Fist, a tight-knit white-collar thieves' ring, sensed his distraction. "Kane's slippin'," they'd mutter. Loyalty was currency here, and love, it was a debt collector knocking. Aiden felt the storm brewing first, in the way Matthew's touches turned urgent, his eyes scanning the yard like a hawk. "What's wrong?" he'd ask, curled against Matthew's side during a rare, rain-lashed rec hour. Matthew's jaw tightened. "Nothing good lasts in here. We gotta be smart." But smart was a lie they both wanted to believe, even as the walls closed in. Fall hit Blackwood like a hangover, leaves turning bloody red beyond the fences, mocking the monochrome inside. Aiden marked the days with tallies on his bunk's underside, each stroke a countdown to parole, 3 years off but feeling like eternity. Matthew made it bearable, his presence a anchor in the churn. They'd carve out pockets of normal, trading stories over smuggled cigarettes, Aiden sketching Matthew's hands, those massive, scarred things that handled him with a gentleness that bordered on reverence. "You're an artist," Matthew said one evening in the chapel, empty save for the Virgin Mary's indifferent stare. They'd snuck in during free hour, Aiden's fingers flying over charcoal, capturing the light slanting through stained glass onto Matthew's face. "Should be out there, galleries and shit, not rotting with us animals." Aiden paused, smudging a shadow. "And you, Steel Mill King? Huh? Building bridges instead of burning him." He glanced up, teasing, but his eyes held the ache of what-ifs. What if the heist hadn't happened? What if Jake had stayed? What if Matthew wasn't marked by ink and regret? Matthew chuckled, low and warm, pulling Aiden onto his lap in the pew's shadows. "Yeah, well, bridges need strong hands." His kiss was slow, exploratory, mapping Aiden's mouth like uncharted land. Aiden melted into it, hands fisting Matthew's shirt, the fabric rough against his palms. It was more than lust, though God. The heat pooled low and insistent. It was communion, two souls bartering pieces in a place that stripped you bare. But paradise in hell had teeth. Rico struck first. Subtle as a snake. A gift left in Aiden's cell. A crumpled note scrawled with slut for Cain. Watch your back, bitch. Aiden burned it, heart hammering, but the fear lodged like a splinter. He told Matthew that night, whispers through the vent. It's nothing, he lied. Rico's just barking. Matthew's silence was thunder. The next day, in the yard, he cornered Rico by the basketball hoop. Voice ablade, call off your dogs, or I end this. Rico smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. End what? Essay? Your little fairy tale? Whole block knows you're pussy whipped. Iron fist ain't blind. The warning hung heavy. Matthew's crew, guys like Tommy Bones Riley, a lanky Irishman with a ledger for every debt, had been side-eyeing him for weeks. They'd built their empire on hits and heists, loyalty forged in blood oaths. Matthew breaking bread with female? It was weakness, a chink in the armor. Tommy pulled him aside in the showers that night, steam curling like accusations. What's this shit with the twink? Maddie, you forget the code? We don't mix with the fags. Draws heat. Tommy's eyes were hard, the same ones that had wept at Matthew's ma's funeral back home. He's not. Matthew started, water pounding his back like judgment. Tommy cut him off, stepping close. He is. And you're blind. Rico's sniffing around, saying you'll flip for a piece of ass. You gonna let that spick divide us? The word landed like a slap. Ugly and American, the kind of slur that echoed from barstools to cell blocks. Matthew shoved him back, suds flying. Watch your mouth, Bones. Aiden's mine. Touch him. You answer to me. Tommy laughed, bitter. Yours? This ain't no rom-com, brother. Wake up before you drag us all down. The rift widened like a fault line. Matthew pulled back from the crew, sticking to Aiden's side like glue. Yard walks where they talk futures, impossible ones. A cabin in the Poconos, Aiden's art on the walls, Matthew's hands finally clean. I'd build you a studio, he'd murmur, arms slung casual around Aiden's shoulders, a shield against prying eyes. Big windows, light for days. Aiden leaned into him, inhaling the soap and steel scent that was pure Matthew. And you'd model? Nude? Preferably. Laughter bubbled up, light in the dark, but it masked the growing knot in his gut. He saw the strain in Matthew's smiles, the way his fists clenched at every shadow. Love was a spotlight here, and spotlights burned. Thanksgiving brought a brittle mercy. Family visits, though Aiden's were ghosts. His sister Jamie too young for the drive, his DeLong gone to the bottle. He watched from the bleachers as inmates reunited, hugs through glass like fragile bridges. Matthew's turn came, his broad back to the room as he spoke to a woman in a faded Steelers jacket. His sister, Rosie, by the photos he'd shared. Aiden sketched her from afar, sharp features softened by worry, mouthing words Aiden couldn't hear. Later, in the visiting room's aftermath, Matthew was quieter, folding a letter with hands that trembled just once. Rosie's pushin' for appeal, he said, bunk creaking under his weight. Says there's a lawyer in Harrisburg who owes her a favor. Aiden's heart swelled. That's good, right? Means you're getting out. Matthew's eyes met his. Stormy. Means leaving you behind. Can't do that. The words hung, a vow in a chain. Aiden climbed down, slipping into Matthew's bunk like it was home, their bodies fitting puzzle piece perfect. "Then we wait," he whispered, lips brushing Matthew's collarbone. Together, skin on skin, breaths sinking, they chased oblivion. Matthew's hands worshipping Aiden's curves, Aiden's nails raking fire down his back. It was messy, fervent, a rebellion against the bars. But betrayal doesn't announce itself. It creeps. Tommy, loyal Tommy, had been watching too close. One night, after lockdown, he slipped a baggie under Matthew's cell door, product from Rico's line, stamped with the Iron Fist's mark. "Found this in your shit," Tommy hissed through the slot. "Guards are circlin'. You settin' us up for the twink." Matthew's blood ran cold. It was planted, obvious as a frame job, but in Blackwood, proof was for civilians. "Bones. Listen. Save it." The footsteps faded, leaving Matthew staring at the poison in his palm. He flushed it down the toilet, but the damage was done. By morning, the crew confronted him in the mess hall, a wall of glares and whispers. "Traitor," Tommy spat, loud enough for the room. Rico lounged nearby, grinning like a jackal. Aiden, sensing the storm, stuck close, but Matthew pushed him away. "Stay clear, Aiden. This is my mess." "Your mess is ours," Aiden shot back, green eyes flashing. But Matthew's walls were up, rules snapping back into place. He vanished into meetings, tense huddles where accusations flew like shrapnel. Aiden paced his cell, sketching furiously, fractured faces, broken chains. Fear gnawed, not for himself, but for the man who'd taught him to fight back. The explosion came swift. During yard time, Rico's crew ambushed Matthew behind the maintenance shed, 5-on-1, bats and boots. He fought like a demon, dropping 2 before a pipe cracked his ribs. Blood slicked the gravel as Tommy watched from the fence, face a mask. Had to be done, Matty. For the family. Aiden heard the shouts, bolted from his sketchpad. He burst into the fray, screaming Matthew's name, dodging a wild swing. "Stop! He's down! Fucking stop!" A fist caught his jaw, stars exploding, but he lunged at Tommy, nails clawing. "You bastard! He's your brother!" Guards swarmed, whistles piercing the melee. Matthew, coughing crimson, reached for Aiden. "Go, Aid. Go." But Aiden wouldn't, cradling his head as medics hauled them both to the infirmary. In the sterile white, stitches pulling, Matthew gripped Aiden's hand. "Shouldn't have come. Stupid kid." Aiden's split lip curved. "Your kid. Always." The tenderness cracked him open, tears mixing with antiseptic sting. Word spread, Kane was out. The Iron Fist excommunicated him, Tommy's betrayal sealed with a shank scar across his forearm, shallow. A warning. Rico claimed the vacuum, but at what cost? Matthew lay broken, not just body but spirit, whispering to Aiden in the dark hours, "Can't protect you now. They're comin' for blood." Aiden refused to bend. "Then we run it together." He smuggled notes to Rosie's lawyer, bartered sketches for favors, anything to buy time. Love, he'd learned, wasn't soft. It was armor, forged in the fire of what you'd bleed for. Winter clawed in, snow dusting the towers like ash. Holidays loomed, a cruel joke. Aiden and Matthew exchanged makeshift gifts. A carved soap heart from Matthew, tucked in Aiden's pillow. A portrait of Rosie's smile from Aiden, hidden in Matthew's mattress. "For when you see her," Aiden said, voice thick. Matthew pulled him close, noses brushing. "Not without you." Their kiss tasted of pine and promise. Bodies entwining in stolen urgency. Slow grinds, gasps muffled against necks. Aiden arched, whispering filth and devotion, Matthew's name a litany on his tongue. It was defiance, ecstasy in chains. But chains tighten. Tommy's final play dropped like a bomb. A snitch letter to the warden, fingering Matthew for the planted dope, twisting it to frame Aiden as the mule. Females run in game, the note read, anonymous but reeking of bones. Investigation loomed, shakedowns, isolation. Aiden faced the board alone, Matthew in the hole pending review. "It's lies," he insisted, voice steady despite the tremor. The panel, hard-eyed suits in ill-fitting ties, didn't blink. "We know your type, Harper." Stirring trouble. Back in his cell, Aiden shattered, sobs racking him until his ribs ached. Through the vent, Matthew's voice filtered, faint. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming to—" But holding on felt like drowning. Spring thawed Blackwood's bones, but the chill lingered in Aiden's marrow. The investigation dragged, a noose of bureaucracy tightening with each interrogative glare. Guards roughed him up during pat-downs. Sear chin for contraband. Princess. Leaving bruises that bloomed like accusations. Matthew's whole stint stretched to a month. Comms severed, leaving Aiden adrift in a sea of hostile stares. Rico's crew escalated. Accidental spills in the chow line. Shoves that cracked ribs. Notes promising you'll squeal pretty when we break you. Aiden fought back in whispers, allying with outcasts, a wiry black kid named Jamal, in for hacking banks, who shared smokes and strategies. "Kane's solid," Jamal said one night in the library stacks, eyes darting. "But Tommy? Snake in the grass. Word is, he's cutting deals with the guards for early out." The betrayal stung deeper than fists. Matthew had called Tommy brother, shared bunks and beats from boyhood streets. Now, for a shot at freedom, he'd sell his own. Aiden penned letters, feverish scrawls to Rosie's lawyer, pleading for intervention, but mail was screened, words twisted. Matthew emerged from solitary gaunt, eyes hollowed but fierce. They met in the yard under a deceptive sun, fists bumping like old times. "Missed you," Aiden breathed, keeping space but aching to close it. Matthew's grip lingered. "Wrote you every day. Burned 'em all." His voice cracked on the edges, raw from silence. Close, Aiden saw the toll. New lines etching his face, a limp from the beating. "Tommy's playing both sides. We gotta end this clean." "Clean," Aiden echoed, bitter. "Nothing's clean here." He wanted to rage, to demand why love came laced with knives. But Matthew's hand on his nape silenced him. A thumb stroking the pulse point, grounding. That night, in the dim bunk glow, they risked it all. Matthew pulled Aiden down, mouths crashing in hunger born of deprivation. "Need you," Matthew growled, hands roaming, peeling away layers, mapping scars like sacred text. Aiden gasped into the kiss, legs wrapping, body slick with sweat and want. It was frantic, reverent. Matthew's mouth trailing fire down Aiden's chest, teeth grazing hips, drawing moans that echoed too loud. Aiden arched, fingers tangling in dark hair, whispering love you like a spell. Release came shattering, a brief heaven amid hell. After, tangled in sheets that smelled of them, Matthew confessed, Rosie's lawyers got traction. Appeal hearing in 2 months. If it sticks. He trailed off, thumb circling Aiden's navel. Then what? Aiden's heart thudded. Hope and dread twins. Matthew's eyes darkened. I get out. You wait, parole's closer for you. We meet in Pittsburgh. Rosie'll hook us up. Fresh start. Aiden nodded, throat tight. Fresh start sounded like a fairy tale, but Matthew's arms made it real. They dreamed aloud. Aiden's gallery show. Matthew's construction gig. Nights under stars not fenced in. It was fragile, this bubble, but they blew it bigger with every touch, every laugh. The crew's fracture deepened. Iron Fist splintered, half loyal to Tommy's ambition, half clinging to old codes. Matthew rebuilt quietly, pulling Jamal and a few stragglers, forging a new pact, protect the vulnerable, no questions. Aiden became the quiet center, his sketches morale boosters, portraits traded for loyalty, faces humanized in pencil strokes. Rico, sensing weakness, pounced. He cornered Aiden in the showers, steam veiling his sneer. Kane can't save you forever, Huda. Bend over, or we make it hurt. His hand clamped Aiden's shoulder, nails digging. Aiden twisted free, adrenaline surging. Touch me, and Kane's the least of your worries. He swung wild, fist glancing Rico's cheek, before guards intervened. Solitary for both, but the spark ignited. Aiden wasn't female anymore. He was fire. Matthew's pride swelled when Aiden returned, sporting a swollen eye but chin high. My fighter, he murmured, stealing a kiss in the laundry's hum. Their lovemaking turned playful that time, Aiden topping for the first time, tentative then bold, Matthew's groans a symphony under his hands. God, Aid, yes, it was equality, power shared, love's true shape. But power draws fire. Tommy's endgame unfolded in whispers, a riot staged for chaos, using the appeal buzz to pin Matthew as instigator. Frame the fag lover, he'd schemed with Rico, blending hates into a toxic brew. The spark, a contraband bust gone wrong. Guards raiding cells, finding nothing but tension thick as fog. It blew on a humid June afternoon. Yard wreck erupted, shouts turning to shoves. Iron Fist loyalists clashing with Rico's Latinos. Neutrals caught in crossfire. Aiden and Matthew stuck together, backs to the wall, dodging fists and flung benches. Stay low, Matthew yelled, shielding Aiden as a bottle shattered nearby. Then Tommy struck, knife flashing from his sleeve, aimed at Matthew's gut. For the fist, he roared, but his eyes flickered. Guilt? Regret? Matthew parried, the blade grazing his palm, blood welling. They grappled, brothers turned beasts, grunts echoing over the din. Aiden screamed, lunging to pull Tommy off, but Rico grabbed him from behind, arm like iron around his throat. Watch your man bleed, princess. Panic clawed. Aiden stomped Rico's instep, elbowed his ribs, breaking free to tackle Tommy. The three tumbled, a writhing knot of limbs and betrayal. Guards fired shots, rubber bullets stinging air. Chaos peaked. Inmates surging gates, flames licking a trash bin. Matthew pinned Tommy, fist raised. Why? Bones? We were blood. Tommy spat red. You chose him. Over us. Over me. The admission hung. A wound deeper than steel, jealousy. Not just code. Twisting the knife. Aiden's voice cut through. Enough. He's done. Let it go. His hand on Matthew's arm trembled. Green eyes pleading. Matthew hesitated, then dropped the punch, hauling Tommy up as sirens wailed. Med bay again. Stitches for all. But the real mending was in the aftermath. Riot quelled, but fallout lingered. Lockdowns. Transfers whispered. Tommy, broken in body and bond, confessed to the warden under pressure. The frame, the plant, Rico's ties. Plea deal bought him time, but the iron fist dissolved. Ashes of empire. Matthew's appeal fast-tracked. Hearing set for August. Aiden's parole board loomed too, buoyed by good behavior and Jamal's testimony. Hope flickered, tentative as dawn. They celebrated in code. A shared cigarette in the yard. Drags passed mouth to mouth, laced with promises. Pittsburgh, Matthew breathed, forehead to Aiden's. First thing, real bed. No bars. Aiden smiled, tasting smoke and skin. And breakfast. Pancakes. Extra syrup. Laughter bubbled. Light as freedom's edge. But edges cut. As summer sweltered, a new shadow fell. Letters from the outside. Jake, Aiden's ghost, wrote, apologetic scrawl, begging forgiveness. Saw your face in my dreams. Come back when you're out. Aiden burned it, but doubt wormed in. Was this love real, or just prison's mirage? Matthew sensed it, pulling him aside in chapel. What's eaten you? Aiden confessed, voice small. What if? After, is not the same, free world's big. Scary. Matthew cupped his face, thumbs wiping phantom tears. Then we face it big. Scary. Together, his kiss sealed it, deep, anchoring, tongues dancing slow. Hands wandered, buttons parting, until Aiden was bare under Saint's eyes, Matthew kneeling like worship. Mouth hot and insistent, drawing cries that sanctified the sin. Aiden came undone, fingers in hair, whispering mine like truth. They emerged stronger, but Blackwood tested always. A final betrayal loomed, not from foes, but fate. August burned hot, air thick with cicada hum beyond the walls, a siren's song for the caged. Matthew's hearing came first, a sterile courtroom trucked in, suits and gavels clashing with orange jumpsuits. Aiden waited in holding, heart a drum solo, sketching courtrooms from memory to steady his hands. When Matthew returned, chains rattling, his grin split the gloom like sunrise. Reduced, he said, collapsing onto his bunk. 7 years, with time served. Out in 18 months, Aiden hooped, launching into his arms, legs rapping as they tumbled in a heap of limbs and laughter. Holy shit, Matty, the kiss was victory, salty with relieved tears, hands frantic as if the world might snatch it back. They didn't stop at kisses, bunk creaking under urgency, Aiden straddling, grinding slow and deep, Matthew's hips bucking to meet him. Gonna make it, baby, Matthew groaned, fingers bruising hips in the best way. Climax hit like waves, crashing them into exhausted bliss. Aiden's board followed, a formality greased by the riot's heroism, his restraint noted in reports. Parole granted, the chairwoman droned, her gaze softening at his sketches. A portfolio Jamal had snuck in. 6 months. Model prisoner. 6 months. The gap yawned. A chasm of what-ifs. Matthew's jaw set. I'll wait. Rosie'll front a place. Pittsburgh's got corners we can hide in. Aiden nodded. But fear not. The outside world's vastness. Jake's letter a siren in his pocket. They clung tighter in the interim. Stolen hours in the boiler room, where heat masked their heat. Matthew took his time those days, mapping Aiden's body like a cartographer. Lips on collarbones, tongue tracing ribs, fingers curling just so until Aiden begged, shattered and whole. Love you, Aiden panted. Always the coda. Love you more, Matthew rumbled, pulling him close post-storm. Hearts sinking in the afterglow. Transfer rumors swirled. Matthew to a low SEC in Ohio for good behavior. Aiden to a halfway house in Philly. Keeps us close, Matthew said, but his eyes shadowed. Blackwood's grip loosened, but grudges lingered. Rico, demoted post-confession, seethed from his cell, plotting one last score. It came on Aiden's last yard day, sun dipping low, painting towers gold. He and Matthew walked the perimeter, hands brushing electric. First meal out, cheesesteak from Gino's, Aiden teased. None of that Pittsburgh crap, Matthew chuckled. Primantes or bust. Kid, the banter flowed easy, a shield against goodbye's bite. Then chaos. Rico's crew. 3 shadows from the blind spot, shank gleaming. For the fist, the leader hissed, lunging at Matthew's back. Time fractured. Matthew spun, taking the slash across his shoulder, blood blooming dark. Aiden screamed, grabbing a loose pipe from the fence, swinging wild, crack against the attacker's knee, bone snapping. Matthew fought one-handed, fury incarnate, dropping his man with a headbutt. But Rico flanked, blade arcing for Aiden. No, Matthew roared, tackling him mid-strike. They hit ground hard, rolling in gravel, steel flashing. Aiden froze, pipe raised, world narrowing to the glint. The shank plunged into Matthew's side, Rico's grunt triumphant. Matthew slumped, eyes finding Aiden's over Rico's shoulder. Run, Aid. Rico twisted the blade, laughing. Your hero bleeds pretty. Rage ignited. Aiden brought the pipe down, once, twice, crunching Rico's wrist, the shank clattering free. Guards swarmed, whistles shrieking, hauling bodies apart. Aiden dropped to Matthew, hands pressing the wound, crimson soaking his fingers. Stay with me, fuck. Matty. Stay. Matthew's hand cupped his cheek, weak but sure. Always. My fighter. His eyes fluttered, medics barking orders, stretcher hauling him away. Aiden followed, numb, the yard a blur of shouts and sirens. Infirmary vigil, hours bleeding into night, Aiden pacing linoleum slick with worry. Rosie arrived at dawn, face ashen under fluorescent buzz, steel mill tough, but eyes red-rimmed. He asked for you, she said, hugging Aiden fierce. Family now. Yeah. Doctors emerged, stable. Missed the artery, lucky, but infection loomed, and with the stabbing pinned on self-defense, Matthew's parole teetered. Could add time, the warden grunted, eyeing Aiden like complication. Aiden didn't sleep, sketching Matthew's face from memory fierce, alive. When they let him in, Matthew was pale, hooked to IVs, but his grip crushed. Thought I lost you, Aiden choked, forehead to Matthew's. Never. Matthew's thumb traced his jaw. Get out tomorrow. Wait for me. Aiden nodded, kissing knuckles. Pittsburgh. Pancakes. But leaving Blackwood felt like amputation. Walls that had caged him now cradled his heart. Release day dawned gray, rain sheeting the bus window as Aiden rolled toward Philly. Halfway house smelled of bleach and broken dreams. Bunk beds, curfews, group therapy circles where he sketched ghosts. Jamie visited Sundays, her hugs fierce, 12 now and fierce as her brother. He'll come. Heroes always do. Letters bridged the miles. Matthews scrawled from recovery. Aiden's inked with sketches, cityscapes waiting. Jake appeared once, coffee in hand outside the house. Missed you, he said. I's hopeful. Aiden's voice was steel. Missed who I was. Not anymore. He walked away, heart lighter. Matthew's words armor mine. Months crawled. Infection cleared. But bureaucracy dragged, hearings, appeals. Matthew's letters grew frantic. Hurry this shit. Rosie says lawyers fightin'. Dreamin' of you. Aiden worked odd jobs, barista irony biting, saving for bus tickets, sketching in stolen hours, lovers under bridges, free and fierce. Thanksgiving again, a year from the riot. Rosie called, hearings tomorrow. He's shaken. Kid. Says your name in his sleep. Aiden's parole officer bent rules, a supervised visit to the Ohio pen. Snow dusted the lot as he waited, breath fogging glass. Matthew emerged, thinner but unbroken, grin wolfish. Come here. Through the divider, hands pressed palm to palm. Stories tumbled. Jamie's school play, Aiden's first gallery nibble, a local cafe show. Proud, Matthew said, voice thick. My artist. The kiss through plexiglass was awkward. Desperate, lips brushing barrier. But love transcended. Soon, Aiden promised. Betrayal's echo lingered in Tommy's shadow. He'd rolled full, testifying against Rico for a reduced bid. But whispers said he hunted old scores on the street. Watch your back. Jamal wrote from Blackwood, now paroled himself. Aiden bought a burner, texted Rosie codes. Christmas loomed. Packages swapped. Aiden's sketchbook for Matthew, filled with their futures. Matthew's carved wooden bird, wings spread. Fly free, the note read. But freedom's price mounted. Matthew's final hearing hit snags. Prosecutor dredging the stabbing, painting him violent. Not changin', the judge drawled. Southern transplant in Yankee courts. Add 6 months observation. Aiden's world tilted. 6 more. He drove home in blizzard, tears freezing on cheeks, vowing not to break. Spring bloomed cruel. Aiden's show a hit. Murals of prison shadows turning to light. Critics calling it raw Americana. Sales funded a lawyer boost. But Matthew's letters dimmed. Tired. Missin' your fire. Aiden visited monthly, each goodbye a knife twist. One June Eve. Post-conjugal haze. Rare mercy. Bodies reunited in a trailer. Slow and sacred, Matthew confessed. Tommy's out. Word on the yard, comin' for payback. Fear iced Aiden's veins. Let him. We're done runnin'. Matthew's laugh was hollow. Not if it touches you. The threat materialized sweltering July 4th. Fireworks masking a knock at Aiden's halfway door. Tommy, gaunt and wired, eyes feral. Kane's bitch. Huh? He ruined everything. Aiden's pulse thundered, but he stood firm. You did that yourself. Bones. He dialed 911 subtle. Phone hidden. Tommy lunged. Fist connecting, Aiden dodged most, countering with a knee to the gut. Struggle spilled outside. Grunts lost in booms. Neighbors shouted. Sirens wailed distant. Tommy pinned him, breath rancid. Tell Kane I said hi, from hell. A boot to the ribs. Then, lights flashing. Cops swarming. Tommy cuffed. Snarling curses. Aiden, bruised but breathing, called Rosie. It's over. She sobbed relief. Maddie's hearing tomorrow. This testimony? Gold. Dawn broke on justice. Tommy's assault flipped the script, painting Matthew protector, not predator. Judge banged gavel. Released. Effective immediately. Aiden raced the miles. Heart a freight train. Prison gates yawned. Matthew stepping free, civilian clothes hanging loose. Rosie hugging fierce. Then eyes locked. Aiden, running, leaping into arms that caught him sure. Home, Matthew whispered, lips crashing home. Pittsburgh welcomed them jagged and kind. Rivers snaking steel gray under bridges that hummed with traffic. Air thick with pierogi steam and mill ghosts. Rosie's spare room became sanctuary. Sagging couch, mismatched mugs, but walls Aiden papered with sketches, visions of tomorrows. Matthew found work quick, construction foreman. Hands calloused anew but free of chains. Buildin' real shit now, he'd grin, kissing Aiden before dawn shifts. Nights were theirs. Takeout sprawled on thrift store rugs. Bodies rediscovering in lamplight glow. No vents. No eyes. Matthew's mouth mapping freckles long memorized. Aiden's legs hooked over hips. Slow rolls building to crescendos that shook the frame. Missed this, Aiden gasped. Nails scoring shoulders. You. Us. Never lettin' go, Matthew vowed. Thrusts deepening. Love's rhythm. After, tangled and spent, they'd talk futures. Aiden's next show in a Shadyside gallery. Matthew's GED night classes. Jamie's summer visit with fireworks on the lawn. But scars itched. Tommy's trial loomed. Assault with intent. Aiden's testimony key. Courtroom stale with AC hum. Tommy's glare a venom arrow across the bar. You stole him, he muttered during recess, cuffed but unbowed. My brother, Aiden met it steady. You lost him. Choose better. Verdict. 5 years. Federal time. Closure. Bittersweet. Matthew attended silent, hand squeezing Aiden's through the bench. Summer swelled, lazy with promise. They drove the Alleghenies, Aiden sketching vistas from truck beds, Matthew's arm heavy around him. This, Matthew said, pulling over at a overlook. City lights winking below. Worth every bleed. Aiden turned, kissing him sunset sweet. Every one. Hands wandered. Zipper teeth parting under stars. Urgent. Open air. Matthew's mouth hot on exposed skin. Aiden's cries swallowed by wind. Release painted the dusk. A vow etched in sweat. Fall brought Jamie, 13 now. Braces glinting as she hugged Matthew fierce. You saved him, she whispered, idle eyes wide. Barbecues in Rosie's yard, ribs smoking, laughter chasing old demons. Aiden watched Matthew with her, gentle giant tossing a ball. Stories of Philly mischief and new, family, rebuilt. But humanity's arc bends slow. Aiden's art took off, New York scouts sniffing, offers for residencies. Go! Matthew urged over diner coffee. Booths sticky with history. Your light. Don't dim it. Aiden hesitated, fork tracing rings. Not without you. Matthew's smile crinkled eyes. Together. Always. He slid a key across the formica to a tiny loft in the Strip District. Rent split from foreman pay. Ours. The loft was raw, exposed brick, windows framing river views, space begging canvases. They christened it proper, paint-splattered dropcloths for bedsheets, bodies slick with turpentine and desire. Aiden rode him lazy, hips circling, Matthew's hands guiding, groans mingling with jazz from a stolen radio. Home, Aiden breathed, coming apart, Matthew following with a roar that rattled the walls. Winter whispered in, snow blanketing mills like forgiveness. Holidays healed, Rosie's tree twinkling, Jamie's cookies burnt but loved. Matthew proposed casual, over Primanti's sandwiches, ring a simple band from his first paycheck. Marry me, Aid, make it legal, official like us. Aiden's yes was tear-choked, kiss ceiling amid cheers. Wedding small, City Hall, Rosie matron, Jamal best man from Philly. Vows exchanged under fluorescent hum. In shadows and light, I choose you. Rings slipped on. Cool promise. Honeymoon, a Poconos cabin, Matthew's dream. Wood smoke and quilts. They hiked trails hand in hand. Aiden sketching deer in frost. Matthew chopping wood with swings that echoed old strengths. Nights by firelight. Slow undressing. Skin glowing amber. Matthew's tongue tracing vows on thighs. Aiden's mouth worshipping scars. Lovemaking marathon positions learned free. Laughter punctuating gasps. Climaxes cascading like falls outside. Forever, they chorused. Bodies one. Spring 2027 bloomed adoption papers. Jamie, legally theirs if she chose. She did, beaming at the courthouse. Big Brothers Forever. Aiden's gallery opening hit. Fractured light. Murals of Blackwood's ghosts transmuted to grace. Critics raved. A gay American odyssey. Tender and fierce. Sold out. Proceeds to prison reform. Matthew stood proud in the crowd. Arm possessive. Whispering. Knew you'd shine. But life's drama lingers soft. Anniversaries marked with tattoos. Matching birds on ribs. Wings spread. Jake faded to footnote. A card ignored. Tommy's letters from inside. Burned unread. One eve. Riverside walk. Matthew stopped, pulling Aiden close. Remember the yard? Thought that was it. Me and you against hell. Aiden leaned in. Green eyes reflecting water. Wasn't end. Beginning. Matthew kissed him deep. World fading to heartbeat. Best rule I ever broke. They walked on. Hands linked. Into the American dusk. Flawed, fierce, humanly whole. Love, they'd learned, wasn't absence of pain but presence through it. A choice, daily, defiant. And in that choice, grace. Years spun, Aiden's book deal, Matthew's crew chief promotion, Jamie's college send-off with teary toasts. Echoes of Blackwood surfaced. Reunions with Jamal, letters to reformed foes, but they were scars, not shackles. On their 10th, cabin revisit, snow again, fire crackling. Aiden sketched Matthew dozing, lines softer with age. Still pretty, he teased. waking him with lips. Matthew stirred, pulling him down. Still yours. Love-making gentle now. Ages blurring edges. Touches reverent. Climax soft. Like sighs. Binding deeper than youth's fire. Outside. Stars wheeled indifferent. Inside. Two men, once female and enforcer, wove a tapestry human. Romantic. Unbroken. In America's heart. Where rules bend for the bold. They endured. Not perfect, but perfectly theirs.